Hello and welcome back to my series called Yu-Gi-Oh! Lost Cards in History. Today we're looking at a card which is very much forgotten and something that you might not have even been made aware of. It is quite a bizarre card, so here we go. It's a continuous trap card called Needle Wall. The effect is once per turn during your standby phase, roll a 6-sided die. Treat your opponent's main monster zones as numbers 1 to 5, counting from your right. And destroy the monster that is in the same main monster zone as the result. If the result is 6, roll again. Now, this card used to be viable at some point, and it wasn't particularly viable, but if you randomly were able to destroy a particular monster that your opponent had, it gave you a little bit of that advantage. And of course, the more they had on board, the more likely you were to get a yes, a destroyed card. The disadvantage of this card, and it's a major disadvantage now, is obviously with the introduction of the extra monster zone. That means that your opponent can really cheat out a card to that area, one of the extra monsters, to prevent this effect from working, if they're that concerned. But then again, also destruction cards don't work that well. You've got level 4 monsters with effect protection these days, and chances are your opponent isn't really going to worry about this card. It can be easily negated, it can be easily outed, and it could be it's a dead card on the time you draw it, unless you're assuming it's your first turn and it's the first turn of the round. Because you can't activate it until your standby phase. That means, you're having to wait until your opponent has finished their turn, and then you can flip it up during their end phase, and then you get to roll the die. Remember, this is just complete pot luck, and there is no flexibility to it. I love the design of it because it reminds me a little bit of ancient Egypt. You've got the needles that are coming through the walls and look like they're about to pierce Don Zalug. Of course, he's not worried. He's perfectly chilled out. He's smug. He knows he's a master criminal. He's a master thief, and is able to do whatever he likes. He can nimbly kind of weave through those needle walls. I do find it a little bit unusual why he was pictured in there rather than Cliff the Trap Remover, because Don Zalug has the effects of either when it does battle damage, discarding from the hand, or sending 2 cards from the top of your opponent's deck to the graveyard, whereas Cliff the Trap Remover has that same discard effect from the hand, but it also has the ability to remove a spell or trap. I think it would have been more clever for them to have shown that in the artwork rather than this card. It's just something I thought was quite interesting about the card, and something I thought people might think to look into. I can't remember exactly what it came out of, but we'll have a look. It is a very old card, so, I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so for North America, it came out of Pharaonic Guardian as a common. Wow, it's old. This came out in July, the 18th of July, 2003. That means it's one of the... It's in the generation, I think, for GX. It might have been between... Yeah, it's definitely GX series, because there was actually an episode which featured the Dark Scorpions. I think it was like episode 40-something, 41, 42, something along those lines, where Chaz Princeton actually had to face Don Zalug, who was one of the Shadow Riders, who was trying to gain the power of the sacred beasts to absorb souls and to power themselves up. They were under the command of Kagemaru, who wanted to restore his energy. I think this is a card I would consider running, not nowadays, but if I was to do something like, I know Simo's done his progression series, and that would be some way of actually using it. If your opponent had the same level of strength of their deck and you were to do something like that. Otherwise, it's not a viable card, and unfortunately it has been forgotten within history. Have you ever heard of this card? I'd love to know. If If you have, down below, were you playing around the time this card came out? Did you think at the time as a kid that this was a very powerful card? Or could you see that it was going to be outpowered already? I mean, you already had things like Sakuretsu Armor, Mirror Force, things running around, Torrential Tribute, anything of that kind of nature that was already surpassing this. The only difference I'd say is this being continuous meant that you could activate it each and every turn that you have it on the field. But, more often than not, it was a dead card. Leave your comments down below, whatever you think. Like the video if you enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe for more of that Yu-Gi-Oh! Daily content.